I would say one of the biggest things I took away from my dad, I mean, because he made good money, but he didn't make like, millions of dollars, like a white collar job or whatnot. But for those 8 years or so, he sacrificed so much of his time, of course, for us to provide a certain lifestyle and to provide for our family. And he was someone who never complained like about anything. And he was super selfless. Frankly, I'm very selfish as a only child. My wife has helped me like a considerable amount over the last like 9 years of knowing her. But that's probably the biggest thing I've pulled into my professional life and even like my personal life. We all go through different challenges, and that is to just continue pushing forward because it just has to get done. And that is by far probably the biggest thing I took away from him.
Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers Podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best. Carson Fox. Brother, how are you today?
I'm good, Kenny. Appreciate you having me, and been looking forward to this last month or so.
Thanks, Carson. I'm excited to hear from what you're doing now. Believe it or not, when I first started this journey of buying real estate, Carson's name is right in the queue of someone that helped me get going. Carson has a background in wholesaling real estate, and I bought 2 houses from him when I was very green to everything real estate. So Carson, thanks for joining us today. I want to start by telling how's business going? What are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, so we did meet through real estate. Likely, whenever you bought that house, I was pretty green myself. So that certainly goes both ways. But I, of course, that's how we met. Probably, I don't know, what, 5 years ago.
Well, my first purchase was 2019, and then I think I bought 2 from you like soon after. So early 2020. So probably 4 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So I got in end of or around middle of 2018. So you know the story, but for all those that are out there, I started a real estate investing company, mostly on the wholesaling side, grew that for 5 years, had a team of 4 and 5 people. And about 4 years into it, we were doing about 30 to 40 homes a year, mostly, like you said, wholesaling, Kenny, but some fix and flips and creative deals. I took a introductory flight actually at the downtown airport. What's really interesting about what stemmed that or the reason that I wanted to do that, about a year or two prior to that, my grandfather at the time turned 100, and he flew a little Cessna 172 on his birthday. And I was actually up there with him because he was in the Air Force. And it was kind of scary, a little frightening, but it got me thinking, wow, like aviation is really cool. Why don't I just, take a flight and just kind of see what it's like? So that's kind of how that happened. And that's where I actually grew my interest in the world of business aviation, and how, long story short, about a year after I took that, introductory flight, actually got into the world of jet brokering. And that is where I'm at right this second.
Jet brokering. If I could ask you wherever you are right now, if you could raise your hand if you know anyone in jet brokering, I would say most of our people are saying no. What was the statistic of people doing what you're doing right now in the world?
Yeah, so it's really small. So oftentimes, if you look at real estate, because there's a lot of people on here who know real estate, it's huge. I mean, just even in the upstate of South Carolina, I think there's like 7,000 or 8,000 realtors. So in the world of business aviation, for brokers who are selling whole aircraft, meaning just like you would sell 100% of a house, you would sell 100% of a jet because there's different ways of owning them. You could, charter them or you could own a piece of them. But, actual broker is about 3,000 to 3,500 in the whole world. So it's very small. And, really the way I thought about how to actually get into it, after I started, taking flight lessons and whatnot and getting really interested, I the kind of way that I work is I really get into something and I just obsess over it. And so I just became obsessed with aviation and I was really having a battle with it and really just trying to figure out, should I do what I've been doing, the last 4 or 5 years, just because I know it and it's working well and I'm growing a team and I had a certain vision for where I wanted to go.
Mhm.
Or do I want to do something that I truly know would bring, a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment, while also being around very affluent, very smart people that you have a lot to learn around. So, long story short, we were on a beach one day for our 4-year delayed honeymoon, and I thought to myself, I want to do something in aviation. My wife's a realtor as well, and I was like, like what skills would best be suited as I go into this new industry? Because the worst thing you could do, not the worst thing, but something that's really hard is going from two completely different industries
Mhm.
because you have those skills, but there's a whole different set of knowledge that you have to learn. And that just takes, time. I mean,
Mhm.
easily a year or two just to build that base of knowledge. And I was like, well, I'm good at sales and what has the highest return for just deals, and that would be selling jets. So I just looked it up and I kind of creatively reached out to about 40, 50 companies and
Mhm.
started with companies. So yeah.
Wow, Carson, a true entrepreneurial, no limits, breaking out of the box that you feel like you might be in story. But did you say 4-year delayed honeymoon?
Yes, 4-year delayed. So we got married in December of 2019. So
Yeah.
this was like right before COVID. If we look at the personal side, I went to the Citadel and I had a lot of my really good friends and I wanted them in our wedding. And so we were just trying to figure out, do we have the wedding in December, which is earlier than we wanted, or do we want it in like the summer when it's warmer? And that was like the ideal time. But I actually realized and we figured out a lot of my friends couldn't come. So we had it in December. It was awesome, such a good wedding. One of my best friends was I actually had three best men. My dad, my 101-year-old grandpa at that time, and then one of my other good friends. So my dad, that's three of them. And April of the following year, I don't even know if you know this, Kenny, but my dad and my grandpa went in the hospital during the time of COVID. Dad, grandpa passed away 2 weeks after being in there, right beside my dad's room, and then my dad passed away 2 weeks later. So that was a very big turning and very just tough situation in my life. By far the hardest thing
Mhm.
I ever went through. And when we look back, it was such a blessing because they wouldn't have been able to be in our
Mhm.
wedding, if if we had it in June or July.
Yeah,
So the good Lord always has a much better plan than we do. So yeah.
absolutely right, man. Wow, what
So
a
yeah, that pushed obviously our honeymoon with COVID and all that, 4 years later. So
that makes
and I missed one of the reasons I also missed the honeymoon. I'm a huge planner, like very typically very organized, like systematic. The day we were supposed to go, or the day before we were supposed to go to our honeymoon, I checked my passport and it was expired. And that's a story in and of its own, in and of itself. But long story short, we went about 6 months later. So yeah,
man, man,
yeah.
so much there, Carson. What a hero. And I'm just trying to figure out where to expound on all of that. Thank you for sharing everything about what happened with your dad and your grandpa. You've mentioned your grandpa twice, and I mean, goodness, the legacy that seems like he has left, and not only your dad, but you. I mean, you're doing aviation, I would say, because of him now, or,
Makes
jet
sense.
stuff,
Yeah, it's
going on
really
that
him.
ride. Um, let's go there in regards to growing up. What was it like in your household? I mean, you've mentioned you're systematic. You get obsessed with things and just dive deep.
Yeah,
Um,
very
not
much.
afraid to go from like one thing over here to one thing over here in regards to like real estate and now jet brokering. So that's a lot of, it seems like your DNA, your makeup here. Is that from your dad, or are you just sort of like the black sheep of the family on this one? What's the
You could
story?
probably call it the black sheep. Both my parents. So I'm an only child. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. So I grew up in the country, just on a farm. Um, Both parents were in the medical field, and I never wanted to do that. And I mean, I would just say like the way I grew up, pretty much a blue collar, kind of like middle class family, went on trips and stuff, but never had anything like extravagant or anything like that. Um, but as far as a like work ethic, I feel like that was just created out of living in the middle of nowhere and kind of creating my own business for other like farmers
Mm,
and owners around there. And so that's one of the kind of like the way I got like my entrepreneurial side from is because I would work summers at these different farms. I would like dictate my pay and time and all that good stuff. And it was on my time, which I didn't like waste time. And so people would have to look after me. But one day, my cousin convinced me to serve at a restaurant because I actually had a good friend. He was working for this high-end restaurant, making, at the time it was like 300-400 bucks a night, which seemed like a ton of money. So I was like, I want to do that. The grass is always greener on the other side.
right.
And so I worked there for like 5 days, this restaurant. It was Lizard's Thicket, not the most premium restaurant. And I made like, it was like 20 bucks or 40 bucks a night. And that's the only like job I feel like I've ever had. And I was like, I am not doing this. I make less money. People tell me what to do, and I don't want to do this. But that's kind of like where the entrepreneur side came from. But as far as like my parents, they were always super loving. I was very close, and I'm still very close with my mom, who's still around. She actually remarried not too long ago. So I spent a lot of time with him. I mean, I was close with both of them. My dad commuted actually a lot from Columbia to Greenville every day. He did that for about 8 years or so. And so, oftentimes for any sort of sport events, school events, my mom was always present. My dad wasn't. And that wasn't necessarily a push to like do some sort of work, to be able to provide that. But I just knew whenever we do have kids that was going to be very important to me to really make that a priority and to set time aside because we all have the same amount of time. But it's just how we use
Mhm,
it differently, and that's what matters. And so
mhm.
that's been a big thing, and that's really something that I want to focus on, of course, whenever we have kids ourselves, because we want 3 or 4. So I'll certainly need to set
Okay.
time for them. So,
Okay.
but
Um,
yeah, my dad, I loved my dad. He was awesome, but very thankful for the relationship we had.
you know, we're in different times. I think a lot of the people I've been bringing on asking about, what was your dad like? It's so hard to compare today to like then, because I mean, if you think about his dad, a
Yeah,
lot of farmers, a lot of
it
blue
was.
collar jobs. It's not like you can just jump into this, internet and connectivity and data information age type of, you know, person
Sure.
30 years ago. So I love that you said he was a provider. Being willing, able to commute. I mean, it's an hour and a
Hour
half
and a half.
each day.
So 3 hours a day for 8 years and about 600,000 miles. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's that's providing. And you said a blue collar job? What was?
but
I'm curious.
he was
What did he do?
he was a physician assistant at dermatology for.
Oh, medical.
Yep.
So I think it's really cool for me to ask that question, sort of find how does the person I'm talking to right now, like what did he carry with him from dad? And I just get that sense of like determination, perseverance. Like I'm not afraid of hard work. I mean, obviously work looks different from each individual.
Sure.
You were took 5 days in the in the server role and you were like, nope, not doing that one again.
Yeah, and I
You know.
just to kind of like add on to that, I would say one of the biggest things I took away from my dad, I mean, because he made good money, but he didn't make like, millions of dollars, like a white collar job or whatnot. But for those 8 years or so, he sacrificed so much of his time, of course, for us to provide a certain lifestyle and to provide for our family. And he was someone who never complained like about anything, and he was super selfless. Frankly, I'm very selfish as a only
Mhm.
child. My wife has helped me like a considerable amount over the last like 9 years of knowing her. But that's probably the biggest thing I've pulled into my professional life and even like my personal life. We all go through different challenges, and that is to just continue pushing forward because it just has to get done. And that is
Mhm.
by far probably the biggest thing I took away from him. Besides him being a big believer, I'm very, very, very strong in his
Mhm.
faith. So yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I want to talk about your faith. I think, since you brought it up, um, invested fathers, I think there's always a sense of like, why I want to know, why do you do what you do? Like the many decisions that we face as dads, and your daughter, congratulations, by the way, is coming
Thank
in
you.
December.
Yeah, congrats.
So um I'm sure you've thought about like what kind of dad do I want to be? How can I instill, the things that matter to me to her and I mean also to your wife. I mean, that's been going on for you said married 2020, I
Yeah, well,
think
we've been
2019.
together for
So like
nine
5 years.
years, and then we'll be
Not
married
okay, so 9
5 years in
years.
December. Yep. We dated
So
for 4 years. So
okay. Yeah, that's we were probably my wife and I were probably dating for 3 years before
okay.
we got married. So tell me just how has the faith what your faith is, how has it number one brought you to this point as like maybe a husband? And what are some thoughts, sort of the motivational thoughts going into fatherhood now?
Yeah. I mean, without my faith, I mean, I feel like I would have nothing. I mean, truly, I wouldn't deny my faith, just, Lord Jesus Christ to anyone. I mean, I would die right now. I mean, that's like, to me, he's number one. And then it's my wife is number two. And then our friends, family, and even children are gonna be number three. And we are on the same exact
Mm,
page as that. Um, Really where my faith strengthened, if we look at like the faith component and then the family component, my faith strengthened so much during my dad and my grandpa's passing. Just because it was so tough, and
mm,
at the same time, just being an entrepreneur as well. I mean, there were many times also, and there's still times like this too. But I remember a time when I was, doing the real estate business, and this was towards the beginning, and, it was at the beginning of the business where we were just renting at the time, and our rent was, like, super cheap. I mean, I think it was, like, $750, but, like, we did not have that, and a deal did not like, I didn't have a deal closing, and I literally looked at, like, not food stamps, but rent help, just because we had, like, no
mhm,
money, and I was like, "Where is this money gonna come from?" And just prayed about
mhm,
it, and whatnot. And then literally like the day before our rent was due, I had a closing and paid for it. And especially on the entrepreneur side, I feel like you have a ton of those stories where you just have to believe
mhm,
not only in yourself, but also that really everything comes from something. For me, it's God by far. Other people believe in other
mhm,
stuff. But I just
mhm,
had enough of those instances and enough of the like just really challenging times in my life that I've truly realized I've gone through enough at this point to know that no matter what I'm facing, how hard or difficult it is, or if I don't even know how I'm going to get through it, that He will always sustain, He will always pull me through, and everything truly will always be right, whether it's from a health standpoint or a financial standpoint or a relations standpoint.
mhm,
Like, I mentioned this earlier, and I am probably the most blunt person anyone could ever meet. I will, like, if you want to know the truth, I will tell you the truth. My wife has learned to be very careful what she wants to know truth wise because, unfortunately, and just being super straightforward, I've hurt her in some different ways, just with different things I said, like truly hurt her.
Mm,
And,
mhm,
from that, I think God's really worked a lot in our relationship, helping us to understand each other, but just showing as well, he's shown so much grace to us, by dying on the cross for our
mhm,
sins. And,
mhm,
we're called to show each other that same grace as well. And so that's helped so much in our relationship and marriage.
mhm.
And by far, like if there's only, one thing that I could do for future children of mine, it would just be to share the love of Jesus with them because to me, that's the only thing that matters. So,
Thank you so much for sharing all that, Carson. I've learned maybe the last like 3, 6 months, the different meetups that I go to, I'm kind of leaning more into marketing and branding and who is Kenny Johnson.
okay.
You start, understanding that like, hey, I'm gonna share my faith with you. This is just part of who I am.
Yeah.
And what I personally have found has happened is people have just kind of come toward me saying, dude, thank you so much for saying that. Like, I'm the same way. And like, let's connect about how God's been working in my life too.
Mhm.
Because like you mentioned this thing and we went through this awful thing. And this is where we turned. I feel like, and even with you mentioned the death of your grandpa and dad,
Absolutely.
you turn somewhere, and
Hmm.
some people are like, well, I just, I dig deep and, find that peace. And I'm like, no way, man. Like, real, you've got to go. And maybe there's a certain person in your life, but I think that's where our faith really means something to us. Sure, when you're on the mountaintop experiences, like God wants us to praise Him and give Him
Yeah.
glory, but through those valleys, we need Him so much. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing all that, and also about your wife. Sounds like you guys have come closer together through
Oh,
those
absolutely.
those hurts, right?
Yeah.
And
And it's one of
if I
those
was, go ahead.
it's one of those things as well, going through really tough things with your significant other, if you had the choice to decide to go through or not, I mean, you almost could guarantee you wouldn't. But I mean, anyone you probably know has gone through a couple of like very tough times in their life, and that just happens to be a couple of things that we've gone through. And I'm sure we'll go through obviously more, but I mean, it's helped so much in all of the areas of our life, and it's especially helped me in areas just like putting her. I mean, simple things, like putting her first. Giving her a kiss on the forehead when I get up because I always get up before her, like
Mhm,
always, never, like
mhm,
almost never sleep in. And those things like mean so much to her. And obviously it takes time and trials and whatnot. But you brought up another thing as far as like motivation. Sometimes people have this very like ornate view or, it's some grand picture of like what like motivates them or whatnot. Obviously, like most and foremost, like I want to always like do what I feel like the Lord's like calling me to do and like share his word, share his truth. But besides the like spiritual aspect of it, for me, like personally, I just don't want to be broke. And that's super simple. But I grew up, like I said, in like a middle class family. We had some money, but they didn't always use it like in the most wise ways. And so, oftentimes they say like your income increases, your expenses increase, together, and that does not lead towards like stability financially. And so, starting my business and then literally getting into a new industry where, in a sense, I had to kind of start over. Like that's been very tough. And so, the thing that drives me right this second, and I'm sure things will like change, like people's motivation changes all the time. But for right now, my number one goal is just like to not be broke because I want to be able to provide and go on experiences and do things for others. Like even simple things like having a space at our house to where we can bring people in. And it's something that I love having them over because there's a couple of things I want to do to my house right now where I don't necessarily want to like bring people in like all the time. And so that's just like my number one influence as far as working right now. And to me, I think that's completely okay. It's not some super, crazy, desire to do something.
Yeah. I love that you have a goal. I think there's sometimes people, the goal for others is I just want to be like this person. I want to have a little bit more over here. You mentioned like that ornate, crafted, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan. You're someone who's very methodical, planned out, but the bar that you're setting is, hey, the financial part of my life, the goal there isn't to have this certain amount, like, hey, $1 million in the bank by this age. It's, I want to be able to provide, but I guess, follow up ask you, are there other goals in your life, motivations? Like you mentioned, I think travel, but like, where are the other buckets outside of finances that
Yeah.
you're investing into?
I really have like three main buckets in my life, like my faith, like my work, and then like working out. And then, part of that is obviously like our relationship with my wife or friends and stuff. But as far as like physical health, I am obsessed with it to the point where like anyone who truly knows me well and knows I'm not going to eat whatever they've likely made and they already know to expect it. They know I'm just going to do like crazy events and stuff, and they've come to like respect it and kind of almost like just make fun of it. But if we look at some different goals that I have, there's a big thing not a big thing, but it's a race in Jackson, Wyoming. It's called the Picnic. And I believe it's 20 miles road bike from downtown Jackson to the inside of Grand Teton National Park. Then you swim 1.3 miles across Jenny Lake, which is like freezing. And then I believe it's a 12-mile run/hike to the very top of Grand Teton. And you do it back down, swim back across, and bike back into town. So that's one of the things I'm going to do next year. And I enjoy those types of races, or like the 4x4x48 by David Goggins that I've done a couple of times, because it just pushes me in different ways. And so if we look at that from like a family aspect, I mean, I try to be as active just with Gene and I as we can, walks and stuff like that. And I know you never want to like put something on your children like too much. At least that's what I've learned from other fathers. You have aspirations for them to do this, and they end up hating, can't stand it. They can't stand it because you push them so hard. But my hope, for us as like a family, from a health standpoint, is to raise them in a household to where we do a lot of things outside, just because there's so much to see. What my wife and I found is if it's between like watching TV or just going on a walk, typically we try to go on a walk just because we have some, much deeper conversations that we actually get to know each other better versus like the TV. We just did it like last night. We talked about it. And so those are some like little small things that we want to incorporate into like our child's life. But as far as like races and stuff, done a Spartan Ultra before in Aspen, Colorado, which was really cool. But I'm really in a phase of my life right now where something like a triathlon, an Ironman is something, that I certainly will do. But I think you have to notice as well, whatever stage of life that you're in, that if you take time to train for this race or to study for this test to get this certain degree, that time is going to be taken away from somewhere, another place in your life. And it used to be where I would do all these races and I was like barely at home. I would work and I would do these races and it would take away time from like my wife and I, Gina, because I'm very independent and she likes like me being there a little bit more. And so that's something we've learned over time. And I've just learned as well that if it comes to like any sort of goals that we have in life, we're always going to take time away from something else and put time to what we're doing. So I try to be very careful and very aware of like the time spent and is it being spent wisely, just because we all have such little of it.
Every yes is 1,000 no's.
Yeah.
And I've learned that, in previous role as a customer service rep in my former life. And when a customer would come to me and be like, hey, we got this birthday party, or hey, we got this thing, I need you to be here, or you didn't do this. And I would, say yes to fix this. Sometimes it did say no to my wife, and we had some hard times from that. And I know every dad out there, every husband has probably faced something similar where the work, comes home or adjust things. So I would give you this advice when daughter is coming. Have you guys named the baby already?
Her name's gonna be Allie.
Allie, okay, when Hallie arrives,
Yeah.
your life will change.
Oh, absolutely. I know it.
I know it's already changed, but as soon as you see this little baby man, so much is going to happen at one time. I like to tell this story. We didn't find out the gender for our both our kids actually. So
Okay.
Moses is 8 years old, and we're waiting. And everyone's asking us, when's it going to be? And we're like, oh, we're not sure. We want to keep it, sort of
Yeah,
surprise from
sure.
everybody. So I'm there. Baby comes. I'm standing there. I'm enamored by everything. They give Moses to my wife. She's sitting there. We're both kind of like crying, excited, and all the nurses sort of know our story. They say, "So, is it a boy or a girl?" And I look at Anna and I say, "I forgot to look. What is the
Yeah.
baby?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "It's a boy." I was like,
That's
"Oh, it's a
funny.
boy." So you'll just be just awestruck by everything, and I'm so excited for you. Um, Carson, thanks for sharing what you're working on. Actually, I'll ask one more question about even that tip, if you would, of we go walking instead of watching TV sometimes. I love that kind of stuff. I love hearing what couples are doing, what
Mhm.
dads are doing, just sort of this like, yeah, we incorporate this little thing. And you said it's a small thing. I think that's a big thing. Just kind of prioritizing connecting through a relationship. My wife, her down, like when the kids are in bed, like watching a show with her is one of her recharge moments. Like she's made
Okay.
that clear. Like I
Yeah.
need to recharge. We're going to put on this episode and just don't ask me any questions. Just
Sure, sure.
let me do that.
Kind of a
Are
reset.
there any other things that you could share as like, hey, we've worked on this, or a tip or trick for couples or dads to be?
Yeah, I'm very extroverted. My wife is is not introverted. She's still extroverted. But I'm very much extroverted in a like business kind of standpoint. Like I love meeting people, lunches, getting to know people. But I literally exhaust myself by the end of the day. My wife, on the other hand, she's meeting clients and stuff, but she wants to like go with her friends all the time and do all these things. And so one of the things that and we have like Bible studies like during the week, and we have date night. I could say two things. We have date night every Tuesday, no matter what happens. Her clients know on her actual listing paperwork it's date night, and she even got called out on it 2 weeks ago because she texted one of them during our Tuesday date night, and they're like, "Aren't you supposed to be on date night?" And I was like, "There you go. That's what you get." So small things like that, like date night, let's talk about that real quick. We started this, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago or three years ago, because I got like, a business coach. And because one of our challenges was we weren't spending, enough time together, intentional time, not just time, but intentional time.
Mm.
So every Tuesday we have date night, and, that could be try new restaurants, or we do something at the house, or literally just like go on a walk. But we are very adamant about not taking out our phones or doing anything like that. And it's to a point that like any of our friends, anyone who knows us knows we can't do stuff on Tuesdays. And occasionally it's gotten to the point where they're trying to plan something and they say, "Hey, I know you'll have date night on Tuesday. Would you mind doing it Wednesday?" Or, anyways, they very much respect it. And so that's one of the things that we are certainly going to continue to do when we have Hallie. That'll be very difficult at first, because she'll be small, and we'll just have to figure out how to work that.
Mhm.
But that would be one thing. I would say the second thing that's helped us a lot, again, with her, both of us being extroverted, but especially her more so on the personal side, is we got to a point and I said, "I don't want to go out every single night. You know,
Mhm.
you want to see your friends, you have like Bible study Monday with date night Tuesday, you want to see someone Wednesday or Thursday, and maybe there's something Friday or Saturday." I was like, "Can we like agree that if you want to go do those things, like I want you to do those, but I don't want to go out every night." And she's like, "I understand where you're coming from." And so, the way it is now, there's not conflict because we've clearly talked about it. And we said it obviously in a nice and kind way. But she knows, like, if she wants to go do something, that's great. Like, she's going to go. But, like, I don't want to do something every night, nor am I going to. And she respects that just as much. So there's a mutual respect for each other's time.
Mhm.
And we know exactly, like, when we're going to spend time with each other versus, like, when she just has time with her friends, or I have time with, like, my friends. And I have friends and relationships, and that can be very difficult because people don't talk about it. One spouse resents the other, there's arguing, whatever. And it's completely avoidable if you just have, those little hard conversations, which afterwards you tell yourself, hey, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. So those are two things: date night, and then talk with each other about commitments, what you're going to do, what you're not going to do together and alone.
Nuggets of wisdom. Carson, thank you so much. I think for dads that maybe have been married for 10, 15, 20 years, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary in October. I think there's definitely that sense of like, are you still dating your wife? And I know you specifically mentioned date night, but like, are you doting on her and kissing her on the forehead in the mornings? And just those little special things, I think really, really matter. And they just show your wife you matter. I'm not ashamed to say, like, she is the most important person in the world to me. If we are not good, my wife, my other events for the day just crumble. Like they don't matter.
And I fall short. Like by all means, there are many weeks that I mess something up, and
of course,
learn a lesson. I'm giving these things that I am certainly doing. But like, I love work. I love working, and she's call me out on things like, you're not going to be able to do this with Hallie. You're going to have to figure out a different schedule and whatnot. So we all have challenges. We all have problems. And one thing I've learned as well, because I have a couple of friends just going through different things, everything can look so perfect and beautiful on the outside, but we are all, no matter the status financially or where we came from, our background, know that there's plenty of other people that are going through the exact same thing as you are, and that can give you a lot of like peace and comfort, especially in times that are just really challenging, because we all have those times where just it's likely we won't talk about them because we're embarrassed to talk about them. So
yeah, the enemy wants us to feel isolated and like you're not good enough, or you're the only one going through this, or you can't share this with someone else because they're going to laugh at you or make you feel all lies. And I'm all about connecting, and I can see that you guys are in that world as well. Carson, I do want to leave our audience with your best way to follow what you're up to, especially in this jet broker. Maybe someone knows someone that's needs a jet. How could they follow you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you look up Carson Fox on both of the profiles, you'll find me. Or you can just type in Carson Fox, your jet broker, and you can find me there as well. But I post 6 days a week, very consistent, and message me or connect or whatever.
Perfect. Carson, thanks for making time to be with us today. And we're excited for Hallie coming into this world in December. Best of luck, buddy.
Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.